Okay, well, good afternoon guys, welcome to another TA update. Today is the 24th of January and it's just coming up to 3:30 p.m. UTC, or here in the UK. And so I would like to start with a screener there so you can see that pretty much the whole of the crypto market is red at the moment, and quite, by quite a lot really, like down 10% on some of them. 6% on Bitcoin, 12% on Ethereum. I mean, this is the beginning of a bear market, I guess. And if you guys were following on the previous live streams, I did say that this was kind of like on the cards and it was coming. Yeah. So looking at the stock market as well, that's very much everything. It's significantly down with a very, very few outliers there, but even McDonald's is down, so it's pretty bad, right? So so that's basically the intro that I'd like to do. If you were here on last week's stream, you know that I showed you this chart here. This is the Bitstamp chart for the weekly on Bitcoin, and that's where we're going to start straight away. And essentially it's just the oldest Bitcoin chart in existence. It goes all the way back to 2011. And I just illustrated that with two simple moving averages, you can kind of see what happened in the past. And I kind of warned people that, every time we've broken below the 50, we've come back and tested at 200. And then that's exactly what's happening right now. We've broken below that one, and it looks like we're on our way to test this one. The craziest thing is that obviously there's a tremendous amount of confluence, because the previous resistance of the last cycle of 2017-18 resistance was exactly at 19,666. So that's the all-time highs from 2017. And guess where the 200 simple moving average is? It's exactly converging to that price. You can see here that I'm not just making this up, but you can see that in previous price action, what happened is every time we lose it, we come down and test that one, and then we get above the 50 again, and every time we lose it, even if we come up to retest it, we eventually come down and test that 200. And the same here, and even on that, this is the COVID dump, so this was basically March 2020 where everything fell, including in the legacy markets. And so we kind of we really did overshoot it for quite a lot, really. But when the candle close came to it, we did close the following week of the 16th of March 2020 straight above the 200 weekly. So as soon as we recovered and we climbed again above the 50 on the 24th of May, something like that. Well, it was the first week of May. Then the rest is history. We just kind of rallied. Okay, so we've already bounced on the 50 once, and now we broke below it again. So will history repeat itself? It's quite likely. And if it does repeat itself, then it's lining up perfectly with what previous resistance was from that cycle back in 2017. Now, there's no point of trying to find the bottom yet. I'm not going to just give you this weekly overview. I mean, of course, I'm going to go down the time frames to show you a little bit more in depth of what I'm looking for. But essentially, this is the level that I'm interested in. And the reason for that is, again, because of geopolitical events, and because the stock market is basically in bear mode, risk off mode. For those of you who don't understand, means that risky assets such as Bitcoin and other equities are just not that attractive for investors right now. Okay, so most of the time what happens is in big downturns, economical downturns, or recessions, or whatever you want to call it, when there is down pressure in the markets, it tends to reflect that the money moves to commodities such as precious metals, etc. Now, people like to think that Bitcoin is a commodity, as in if it is a store of value, and to a certain extent I agree, but in the eyes of Wall Street right now, Bitcoin is not at that stage just yet, and it's still considered a risky asset, and as such there's no interest in buying at these highs. We haven't seen that for quite some time. There's just no bidding happening at these highs, and the majority of people trading and trying to bid this is retail. So essentially what we've got coming next week is also quite significant. We've got a FOMC, a Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday afternoon. If you're in the UK, so it's actually Wednesday morning for the United States. And that will kind of like pretty much just highlight what's already been announced. That's what's expected anyway, which is that the Federal Reserve will continue with the interest rates hike around about 7%. And if so, the markets will continue to take a downturn. Additionally, on Thursday, there is a meeting, and I think it's also in the United States, regarding the future of cryptocurrencies and blockchain regulation. So it's a regulatory advisory with the government, deciding on what regulations and how strict these regulations should be for the protection of the consumer. And of course, this could have an adverse reaction on the markets and create volatility, if anything, in the markets. So right now, looking Monday, Tuesday is just going to be choppy. I don't think that there's any point of trying to trade with high leverage or putting high stakes before these meetings happen. And actually during the meetings, because Wednesday and Thursday are likely to be quite volatile and create kind of a whipsaw type of scenario where you can wick to the upside and then wick to the downside, and just extreme volatility in the markets, not just in the crypto but also in the legacy markets. And you're probably thinking, well, why should I care about the legacy markets? Crypto is different, right? Well, not really. Okay, so I'm just going to show you I'm going to take these off. And so this is the Nasdaq. Okay, so this is the dump of 2020, March 2020, and literally on the weekly you can see that this has just been up only without breaking any market structure. Okay, higher highs and higher lows the whole time. Even on these corrections, we've kind of like stayed above the previous significant lows. Okay, this is a significant low. We'd had a correction here. However, we printed a higher high and now we've just broke market structure. This could be the beginning of the end for the legacy markets. In terms of weekly market structure, this is bearish, okay? This is extremely bearish, and everybody that's looking at these charts is seeing that we broke significant market structure since March 2020. So, is it possible that we do a great big correction like this and then just carry on as normal? I mean, yes, of course it is possible. There's elections coming in the United States for this year, so it's very likely that they will try and remedy the situation. But I just wanted to point out something that is very significant here, especially on the lower time frames, and you will see the correlation that I'm trying to show you, and that is no, I'm going to put this as a line, okay, and this is the correlation between the Nasdaq and Bitcoin, okay, and you can see that there is like a strong argument for the correlation of Bitcoin and the Nasdaq and legacy markets as a whole. This happens exactly the same on the S&P. Okay, I think I've already showed you guys this week, last week, and you can see that there's a few discrepancies, but Bitcoin is in orange, the S&P is in blue, and you can see that very much the movements are exactly the same. So these are moving in tandem, which basically backs up the theory which is, it's not really a theory, but it's more of a narrative, if you like, that Bitcoin is still considered a risky asset and is very much being traded in the same with the same approach as the Nasdaq and the S&P. So I just wanted to highlight this so that you guys know that I'm not just pulling my ideas out of Twitter or anything like that. I'm actually looking at the charts and seeing if this is true. I'm not just going what by somebody is telling me, okay? So it's very obvious on the lower time frames. It's not so obvious on the higher time frames. However, I just wanted to highlight that so that you guys can see, okay? So we see a move to the upside, okay? Moves to the downside, spikes as well to the downside. Here we are. Exactly the same thing. In fact, if you look at these side by side, they are very, very similar. Okay, so make of that what you will, but essentially what I'm trying to tell you is that if we are indeed in the beginning of a major bear cycle for the equities, for the stocks market, for the normal stock legacy markets, Tradfi, whatever you want to call it, if this is indeed at the beginning of a very large correction, I expect the price to come back to previous support and continue lower. It could come all the way to this level here. Okay, so we just have to be prepared for this bear market to affect crypto, if we are indeed seeing these correlations, and if they are to continue these correlations. So obviously I'm going to keep a close eye on this, and I don't want to make this too long of a TA update, but I just wanted to highlight, just because some people don't really seem to realize, and they seem to sort of be blindsided by the value of these projects that they're invested in. And sometimes you just have to look at the overall picture and just choose carefully what you do with your money and how you protect your money. It's very clear that right now Wall Street and the legacy markets are in risk-off mode, which means that they're protecting capital. In order to do that, they exit more risky assets, and they go to less risky assets such as precious metals, oil, gas, etc. So just bear that in mind. Commodities, if you like. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so without going too much into that, which I think I've already covered in great detail, I just wanted to highlight that. Okay, so essentially what I'm looking here for, at least the first target on a medium to longer term basis, is around about the 20k mark. Okay, $19,000 and 666 cents, which is, again, like I said, where the previous resistance was on the previous cycle. Okay, it's just too much confluence. It's exactly where the 200-week is converging to, okay, on the Bitstamp chart. So anyway, without going too much more into that, this is, you just have to bear in mind as well, just one more thing, because I forget to mention this. I do technical analysis here for a lot of coins, but you have to really take into consideration that these coins, it doesn't matter how strong they are fundamentally, and how good they are of a project, and how amazing of a team they have, and the idea is fantastic, the tokenomics could be fantastic, but when Bitcoin dumps, even if it's just like, for example, 6%, you can see Ethereum dumping 11%, you can see big names like, for example, Cardano 9%, Solana 12%, you know, so there's a lot of volatility in these altcoins, especially when Bitcoin is kind of like the barometer, if you like, of the market. So if Bitcoin is the barometer to all of these shitcoins, excuse the pun, all of these altcoins, if you like, are using Bitcoin as a barometer, and if Bitcoin is using the stock market as a barometer, then you really see why I started this talking about traditional finance and talking about the stock market as a whole. So it is important that you keep an eye on these meetings if you are trading with a little bit of size, and if you really are interested in the markets. But if not, then you just press the short button now, and until we start seeing some rallies. But at the moment, it is looking very bearish. Okay, so that's basically it. So let's have a look at the daily chart here, and I'm going to use here a volume profile. I'm going to take these here. Take these off, and again, if you've been here a while with me, you know that this volume profile is basically anchored to January 2021, and you can see that we've got three distinct distributions here, and like I said to you guys, if we break below these highs here, these previous levels of resistance, which is basically this, essentially this level here, okay, this there wasn't this one, where was it, the volume zones perhaps, yeah. So essentially if we broke below this, the top of this balance area here, which would be acting as support, then it would be a very quick trip to the downside to go and visit the other side of that balance, and that's essentially what's going on right now. Okay, that is exactly what is happening. It does look like we've bounced here at $33,000, but I think it's a matter of time until we come and visit these lows. Okay, so this is on a daily time frame, obviously a little bit shorter time frames, and you can really see how we've kind of entered this balance area. As soon as we kind of entered it, we just very quickly ran to the downside. So where do we see this stopping? Where is it likely to stop? Well, I had the highest of the volume nodes here highlighted in orange, around about 34,500, and you can see that we've broke below that as well. The point of control is usually, or the highest volume node, which is essentially fair value or the most volume traded price. It's the only thing that can stop us from visiting both sides of the balance area. We've broken below that now, okay, so essentially that point of control did not hold us up. So like I said, and like I predicted to you guys, and I said to you guys last week, that we're very likely to come and test this $31,000 to start with, perhaps even as low as 30,000. Okay, so this is what the immediate price action that I'm looking for the next few days. I'm not really interested in starting to look for longs and looking for buys until we hit those levels. But when we do hit those levels, I'm not just going to hit buy and just pretend that everything's going to be okay and that we're just going to go straight up from here. It is possible that we go much lower, just like I showed you on the previous chart, where actually that previous resistance was around about $19,666. Okay, so that's way down here. Okay, so that's around about where this level of consolidation is. All right, so what I wanted to show you is something even more significant, in my opinion, which is if I go back, in fact, I'm going to leave this here for the 1st of January. I'm going to go on a different chart here, and I'm going to look at the Coinbase chart, perhaps. I just want to show you another volume profile here. So where we are, we've created this kind of weird triple distribution of volume. Okay, do you see how that pales in significance in relation to this previous? I know I've got the log chart. Okay, this is the log chart, just to so that it makes a little bit more sense, because if I take it off logarithmic, then it becomes a little bit more subjective. Okay, but I just want to put this into perspective. Okay, in terms of significance, this volume is really nothing compared to what we've got down here. But what I wanted to highlight to you guys is this area here. Okay, so I'm highlighting this here. There is really very little volume at these levels, with a little exception, which is where that little line is, which I'm going to make it as a white line, if you like, or perhaps that's too confusing. I'm going to do it as a blue line, which is basically essentially where that high volume node is. Okay, so that's sitting at around about $23,000, but that's it. That's the only level of support that we've got, and that kind of like really marries up with also another level of consolidation below here. Okay, so whilst I'm looking for that $30,000, $29,000 level to hold as support, which it is possible that it will hold as support, because this is a low volume node, or a low volume area, if you like, there is very little hope of us finding, there's nothing really stopping us from wicking all the way down here to round about that level, $19,000, okay? Because there's such low volume there. So if there's more bearish news coming out of that FOMC meeting, out of the Federal Reserve, then you can see that it's a very quick trip to this level here, around about $20,000. Okay, so what I'm not saying that this is going to happen this week or that it's going to happen next week or whatever, but I'm just saying, you know, why I'm not blindly just willing to buy at 30,000. I'd rather wait and see what happens. Okay, chances are, because this is the low volume node, I think that maybe we see this level act as support, and then perhaps this level act as support as well. So $25,000, nice big round number. We've also obviously $30,000 is also a big round number. So 30,000, 25,000, and then we've got this little high volume node here at 23,000, and then $19,000, which is the previous resistance, which is also where this level of consolidation here is at. Okay, so that's what we're looking on Bitcoin right now. Okay, you may say, well, you know, this could just bounce here. Yeah, of course it can. But I don't believe that we're going to even if we bounce here, I don't think we break this market structure here above $44,000. I just can't see it happening right now, and I'll explain to you why. But with the bearish news coming out of the stock market and everything, I just can't see it happening. Okay, so it is possible that we also see a little rise here, a little relief rally, and we get all the way up to $40,000 or $41,000. Okay, everybody will start going crazy, because they think that's it, we're going to 100,000 now, that was just our correction, we're going up now, and of course it rolls over and comes and tests these lows. All right, so just remember that if you're a big player, if you're a whale, it's in your best interest to dump incrementally. Okay, you don't want to dump it all in one go, because otherwise this kind of thing happens, cascading liquidations, and you end up selling your first Bitcoin here at 65,000, but by the time you're done, you're selling Bitcoin at 30,000. So they do it in increments, okay? Pump a little bit, dump a lot. Pump a little, dump a lot. So just bear that in mind, okay? So obviously it's not just going to go straight down unless some really bearish news come out. So it is quite possible that we come up and test this $40,000 level again. And if we do, this would be a great opportunity for you guys to exit the positions that you think might be a little bit more precarious, okay? So rather than dumping at the bottom, I think when there's too much pain and you can't bear the pain anymore because you've lost too much money, then I think perhaps what you should do is just wait and just see if we can get a little relief rally, because we do usually get those, and a little relief rally until the market starts curling over, okay? So at the moment I'm looking at $40,000 for that, but we could go obviously a little bit higher. I just don't see it breaking this high, and this high is around about $44,000, okay? So that is essentially what I wanted to show you on a bigger time frames. On a smaller time frames, like I said here on the daily, you can see that there's this level here around about $31,384. That's the essentially the edge of this high volume cluster. We've also got a low volume node here around about $30,000, so it is possible that we get a nice little bounce there. As you can see though, this level of support has been tested many times before, so this is not a high probability trade for me. I wouldn't be relying on these levels to hold as support when they've been tested so many times, okay? Essentially this one held as support. It held as support a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4 times here, because it only been tested a few times here, right? But after a while, the liquidity is consumed and the price goes straight through it. Here, we might get a little reaction at first, but I don't expect much of a reaction. However, these levels here have not been tested yet. So even though there's a big void in volume all the way to 19,000, right? Then I do think that these levels will gauge a little bit of reaction, okay? And you can see here on the daily, we've got a little bit consolidation around about $25,000, and we've got the other one around about $19,000, okay? 20,000, 19,000. So I hope that is clear for you. These are the levels of support that I'm looking at as buy levels, if you like, to buy on an investment type of long-term investment type of scenario, okay? But of course I will have to monitor what's happening in the stock market and just see if I am entirely happy with the outcome, okay? Is it looking a little bit more bearish? Is it looking a bit more bullish? Are we likely to see a relief rally because of the politics involved in it, where, you know, people want, the politicians want us to have a little bit more trust in the market, and they want to sort of like see the markets bounce up a little bit because it's looking a little bit scary in the traditional markets? I don't know. What I do know is that there are elections this year, and usually when we have elections in the United States, you tend to see a little relief rally because obviously the policies get a little bit softened, just to drain a little bit of sympathy from the crowd, okay? So I hope that analysis is kind of quite complete for Bitcoin. I wanted to spend a little bit more time on Bitcoin because, again, like I said, it's the barometer for the whole of crypto. So there's no point of just giving you certain levels and not explaining to you why. I wanted you to understand the whole complexity of it, and I hope you appreciate that. I know it's a long 25-minute rant so far, but I hope that you can appreciate why I'm doing this. So before I move on to the smaller time frames and other coins, I'm just going to read here the comments. If you do have any questions or at any point, just please post in the comments here on YouTube. I will try and answer them in between coins and in between analysis, and I will try and answer to the best of my ability. And yeah, we'll go from there. So I'm just going to read the first one here. Wouldn't it make sense for cryptos to actually gain against the regular markets in the midterm of this year, considering the macroeconomic scenario and that people will look for alternatives? In an optimistic kind of scenario, it does make sense, but it's just simply not true. It's just not what we're seeing. As a narrative, it fits. Okay, it would be great to see crypto as a safe haven. Because it's essentially fuck you money, isn't it? It's money that, you know, obviously not all of it, because they are ledgers and they're essentially very easy to track with forensics, and the tax man can track Bitcoin and it's not anonymous at all. But there are anonymity coins, and there are coins that there are ways that you can sort of create an alternative ecosystem to the normal traditional economic model, if you like, with central banking and stuff, and that is actually the whole purpose of Bitcoin. That is why Bitcoin and why Satoshi created Bitcoin, you know, the whole purpose of it. In fact, if you go and read the white paper and on the Genesis block, you see that as Chancellor on the second bailout, the banks are on the brink. So I completely agree with you, but we're just not seeing that right now. I go by the charts, okay, so not so much the narratives. And on the charts, all I can see is that Bitcoin is being dragged along with traditional finance, and as a result, all of the altcoins are being dragged along, with very few exceptions, along with Bitcoin. And like I said today, there's only like 5-6% correction on Bitcoin, and you see in some of these coins 10-15% correction, just because that's just the way it is, and there's panic and fear in the market. So again, fear in the market creates great opportunities, and this is where you should be thinking about buying. But I want to see the outcome of this Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday and see where we are going with this. But I just thought I would highlight that it would make sense to keep an eye on the traditional markets and on the news, just to get hints of what might be happening in the future. So I hope that answers your question. That's the question from Vandal the Priest. Yeah, thanks for the question, man. So anyway, let's carry on. Like I said, I am expecting the price to go and visit the edge of this balance area here. If it does get here, I don't expect it to just bounce straight away. I think, in fact, what we'll do is we'll chop around and we'll kind of like create a little bit of a bottom here. It generates a little bit of interest. It generates liquidity as well. It's engineering liquidity. And then depending on what the meeting will do, if it's positive or negative, we'll see where the majority of the volatility will go to. Obviously, what we want to see is bidding, and we want people buying at the low so that we can pump. And again, I don't expect the price to get much higher than that red line here at $41,000. Okay. However, the volatility to the downside, I would expect a very sharp wick, perhaps even all the way to $20,000, 19,000, something like that, and then perhaps coming back to the same area again. So essentially, what is likely to happen is that we start forming a bottom here. It creates the false illusion of security, just a little bit like what we did here, and then we kind of sweep the lows, go back high. This is the optimistic view. Of course, it doesn't have to happen like this, especially if it's if the news are bleak. And if the news are bleak, then even if we come and visit down here, we could come and test this point of control here at $35,000, 34,000, something like that, and then just kind of dump, okay? And if we dump, then like I said, I do expect this level here around about $20,000, $19,000 to be the first level of support, of significant support, because it is untapped liquidity, okay? There's consolidation there, and it hasn't been tested. So for me, this is a high probability trade, and around these levels, I would be interested in buying and perhaps betting that we see a relief bounce from there. Okay, this would be a nice big capitulation candle to the downside that would put a lot of people out of business, and it would create extreme fear in the market. I mean, there's already plenty of fear in the market. You can see these huge projects like Luna and Sol and these massive projects that had so much traction behind it, and they're dumping on the double digits. So there's plenty of fear in the market right now, but I think we've got quite a way to go, just quite yet. Okay, no, we're not quite done yet. So I think a big capitulation candle all the way to around about $20,000 would put the fear of life into many people. I think a lot of people would not be able to sustain the pain, including the ones that get liquidated and stuff. So yeah, it is possible that we see this kind of thing, nice big wick to the downside, very quick movement back to the upside, and then we'll have to wait and see what this reaction is around about this level. Okay, of course, that we could come here and find resistance around about this balance area here, and then go much lower. Of course, that could happen as well. Okay, so this is a possibility, but we also could just literally just come and test those lows with a very sharp wick, okay, and then just find balance within this balance area, within this volume cluster here, and then look at perhaps consolidating up here, and then slowly start taking these levels up to the upside, perhaps even test that, come all the way back down, and then just kind of rotate sideways before we gain enough liquidity and enough strength to break above this low volume area here. Okay, I think it's with the economic outlook, I think it's going to be quite difficult to get back to those levels above $43,000, $44,000, between 44 and between 43 and 53. I think it's very unlikely that we see that in a hurry, but I think at these levels at $20,000 is a decent buy. So that's what I'm looking for right now, and that's what I'm interested to see. I'd like to see a big capitulation candle, just like we saw here in 2020, and like we saw in November, I think it was 2019, I believe. Nice big capitulation candle when everybody thought we'd already printed a bottom. That's what I'd like to see. So again, do not be distracted. I do think that even if we come all the way down here, it doesn't mean it's over. Okay, we could be down here for quite some time doing this sort of thing, chopping around here, and then still do that nice sharp to the move to the downside. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so that is what I can see right now in terms of Bitcoin. And even if we do see a rally on a bullish kind of news that we see on Wednesday, and a nice big positive news coming out of the Federal Reserve, I do still think that we probably see a rally up to around about $42,000, $40,000. But unless we can reclaim this level here at $43,000, I will not be convinced. Okay, that means a higher high, so printing a higher level than this one here. Okay, if we can print higher than this and then retain this level here as support, then I'll be convinced, and this would be the level for me to actually enter and buy and go long, because I would bet that we would go to this level here. But I just can't see it happening right now, and I'm sorry, it's just the way, it's what the chart's telling me. So that is it for Bitcoin. I think I've spoken enough about Bitcoin. So again, I'm going to chart all of these other coins like Ethereum and all these other altcoins, but just bear in mind that all of these are pretty much in tandem with Bitcoin, and my technical analysis could be not very accurate if Bitcoin decides to have a little 5 minutes, a little funny 5 minutes, and go to the lower prices. So anyway, Ethereum USD, and you can see basically essentially we kind of broke. We bounced first here on this the low of the balance area. We got to the middle, but we couldn't really get to the top. There was just not enough strength, and of course Bitcoin rolled over and fell. So of course Ethereum did exactly the same. And on Ethereum USD, we've kind of reached this level of consolidation. There was a nice little FTR there. We kind of reached that and we bounced there, but we're still very much on the way down. Okay, there is a green line here that of support at $2,000. Nice big round number. It's also the point of control for this balance area here. And failing this one, I would expect price to come all the way down to around $1,500–$1,600. Okay, so again, we want to see something like a bounce here to go to the upside. This would be the relief rally and the perhaps the area that you want to exit your positions. Because unless something very, very positive happens, I think this is the level that we'll find resistance at. Okay, around about $3,000 will be a very difficult level to regain. Okay, of course, if we regain it, then I'd like to see something like this. Okay, confirm this as support, and the low volume node, or the imbalance area in between the two rectangles, would act then as support, and then we go higher. But that remains to be seen. I do think that we've got more chances, if we are to visit up here, to find that this is resistance, and we come all the way down here. Okay, the resistance could even come as high as $3,000. Okay, so we could actually come all the way up here to the previous support area. Okay, so just bear that in mind. All right, it doesn't have to stop here. You can go a little bit higher, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so Ethereum USD, I do expect this level here to act as a little bit of support here. We're already seeing a little bit of a bounce, but nothing major on the daily. And if we do come to the downside, I think this is the next level of support here, around about $1,600. Okay, if we do break below that, then it's down to Goblin Town, as they like to say. And we do see that there's previous support here, which is previous resistance. It got tested as support a couple of times. Then this one here has not been tested much. Okay, in fact, the bidders chased the bid here, and the price bounced on this, essentially this little order block here. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight there, make a tiny little block there. In fact, it doesn't need to be that big. You can see that little order block here, and that's exactly where the price is bounced from. Okay, so we haven't even tested this lower one. This lower one would be a little bit more significant in my opinion, and I think that perhaps where the origin of the move becomes, and actually that makes a lot more sense, because this has got tapped 4 times here. Okay, but we didn't consume the whole of the liquidity, so I do think that around about $1,500, $1,700 would be the level that I'd be looking for for a bounce on Ethereum. Okay, so of course that if we break below that, then we've got much lower prices, and eventually $1,000 would be the level that you'd be looking for a bounce. But that's it for now on Ethereum USD. I've given you the potential levels of resistance if we do go to the upside, and the potential levels of support if we go to the downside. Ethereum BTC, let's have a look at how it's behaving. And just like I said to you guys at the last couple of weeks, I've been saying this, as soon as we kind of entered this balance area, which is essentially this big volume cluster, if you like, I said that it's very likely that we test both sides of it, and that's exactly what we've done here. We've just bounced on this 65,000 sats level. You can see that there's a nice little wick to that side here. That essentially is a line that I've put on the edge of this high volume cluster, and it also bounces. It's got like nice big confluence here with this low volume node, and in fact I'm going to move this line. I'm going to put it on the low volume node here. I'm going to take this magnet off. I'm going to put that on the low volume node here. Okay, you can see that there, right? And look at where the price bounced. Exactly on that line. Okay, you can see that there, right? Low volume node. That's exactly where the price bounced. So, you know, these things, this is why I only use volume. I don't use anything else. So I don't know if this helps you, but I hope it does. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not gonna hide what I do, or, you know, I'm trying to give you a little bit of a trading education because you guys basically here and paying attention. So I'm hoping that this kind of like helps you understand the markets and helps you understand why I don't use lagging indicators. I only use volume. But essentially what I'm seeing here on Ethereum BTC is that we have tested the low volume area here. So now we could see a little bounce here to 71,000 sats, okay, which is essentially the point of control. And depending on the strength or weakness of Bitcoin, of course, if Bitcoins just start going sideways and chopping around and we get a bit of a bid on Ethereum, then it's very likely that Ethereum will come all the way up to 71,000 sats here, looking a little bit stronger than Bitcoin. And it could do something like this, okay, and then go lower. All right, it could also just go up to the downside here, start chopping, deviate, come back up, and then go and test that level there. Okay, but essentially the first level of resistance is where that where this level here is. I'm going to put that in red so it becomes a little bit more obvious. These are levels of resistance now. Essentially they're just basically the low volume nodes. Okay, I'm going to put that one here as a level of resistance as well, and these are the levels of support, and I expect another level of support down here. I'm going to make that one green, and another one here, and another one here, perhaps even as low as that. Okay, so that's basically, we are around about 66,000 sats right now. I do expect to find a little bit of support at 65,000 and 64,000 as well. Failing that, then we've got 60,000, 58,900 and 56,000 as well. You can see that below that, then we're really kind of a little bit, it's a bit of a worry because there's hardly any volume traded at these levels. Okay, so essentially what we would like to see is price to start rotating here on Ethereum, like calming down and settling. Okay, even if we go to the highs, just come and test the lows here, even deviate to the downside, but essentially just start rotating within these levels here, these parameters, which is previous consolidation. Okay, you can see that that's been tested as support many times. So it could give way, but it's not just going to keep hitting the same one unless it's very, very bearish. But yeah, essentially what you want to see here is a little bit more sideways, if you like, price action, and just seeing Ethereum finding a little bit of balance here and just starting to do this sort of thing. Okay, between these levels here, perhaps test level, find resistance, and then just kind of go sideways a little bit. Okay, so I'm just going to leave those lines there, but that's essentially what you want to do. If the price gets anywhere near this area, I think it'll be a very quick trip to the downside, and then the next level of support, of course, will be all the way down here on this high volume node at 31,000 sats. that's basically it for Ethereum BTC. Levels of resistance I've already highlighted, and of course we've got these ones much higher at 79,000, 81,000, and 88,000 sats. So let's have a quick look at FODL versus USDT here on OkEx. Again, I don't really like charting this one just because, beg your pardon, just because of these nice big wicks to the upside. So I think this is either pump and dump groups, like I said before, or somebody with a fat finger, but it just kind of messes up the chart a little bit. So I don't like charting this one. So I'm going to look at FODL versus USDC, and FODL's taking a little bit of a battering. Unsurprisingly, obviously, everything else is taking a battering here. So yeah, so we're kind of like, we've just gone past the point of control here. We've lost the point of control, even though we tried to get back above it. We've kind of lost that now, and there's just extreme fear in the market. So we're looking at 17 cents right now. We were for a very long time around about the 25 cent mark, and even around about 30 cents as well. So yeah, I think the people that saw, or people that were buying at around about 30 cents perhaps got a little bit spooked at 25, and at these levels they can't stand it anymore, and they're just panic selling. This is where opportunities are made, okay? So this is people that have made money on the bull market, on it going up, and that they've cashed out at the top, are now looking to buy, okay? So they have to look at solid projects, and they're going to look at solid projects that have dumped by a lot. And these are where opportunities are made. So make of that what you will. I cannot draw really much levels of support, because this candle here, this essentially the big long candle that initiated the market, the listing, it's just one big green candle, okay? So all I can do really is looking at volume, and at the moment we just see this big low volume node here around about 15 cents, okay? So if we're going with 15 cents as a level of support, I suppose I could do that. I could put one here, and then we've got 10 cents, should be also nice big round number here, 10 cents, and then obviously 5 cents, but I don't think we're going to go that low. But essentially I have to kind of like just take that in consideration. Okay, so these levels here above are now levels of resistance, so I'm going to put them in red. But yeah, it just looks it looks just as bad as everything else does in the markets right now. FODL versus USDC. Let's have a look at FODL versus ETH. Now this is very interesting. Okay, so even though FODL is losing a lot versus USD, because Ethereum is having a bit of a dump as well, then FODL is just very much in line with that. It's just going sideways. It's very much in line with Ethereum. And in fact, if we were to look at, we haven't even tapped these levels of support that I drew out for you guys last week. So it's interesting that we're actually staying above this low volume node. I'm not sure what the volume is saying at these levels. Let me have a quick look. Indicators, volume. Yeah, they're still buying at these levels. There's higher levels of selling as well, but they're still buying, and you can see here basically these green candles here at the lows, it always attracts buyers, and I'm sure that this is to do with the mechanics of decentralized trading. But essentially FODL is looking fairly equal to Ethereum in this kind of dumpy market. Okay, so it's just going sideways. The levels of support are still here. They have not been tapped. I do expect them to act as support, and the levels of resistance are also still here, and they've been acting as resistance for quite some time. Okay, so that's been tapped 3 times, that level of resistance. If we do manage to get all the way up here again, I don't think there's going to be much resistance going up to this next level, but we'll have to wait and see if there's a recovery in the markets on Wednesday or not. But yeah, essentially this level here has only been tapped once. These levels here, this first level of support here has been tapped quite a few times. Okay, so again, the more it gets tapped, the weaker it becomes. This level is actually a support here around about 715,000 way. So I do expect this level to act as support. If not, we could go all the way down here, but I don't see that happening. I think people are hodling this very, very strongly when we look compared to Ethereum. So very positive for FODL. HAV versus USDC. or versus USD, should I say? And I am looking at the this is just on on Binance. Okay, so unsurprisingly, this first level of support here that I'd highlighted is given away. This is a low volume node here, and the price came all the way to this low volume node down here. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so this low volume node has failed. This is now resistance. I'm going to change that. And this should be also seen as resistance here. But as you can see, we did, like when we first touched this low volume node, we did find a little bit of a reaction there. Okay, so we came back, we came below it. We tried to take it back because it's a low volume node, but then it acts as resistance. Okay, so in fact, I'm going to put that there, and you can see that it wicked to the upside, it wicked to the upside, and it just couldn't get above that $160 mark. Okay, so then of course that's an entry for a short, and we go on to the next one, and that's exactly what we've done here. Okay, so obviously failing that one, where do you think the next one will be? Of course it'll be down here. Okay, so in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this level down here and put that as the next low volume node for you guys to keep an eye on. Okay, low volume area, if you like. The low volume node is essentially very small, and it's around about there, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, like this green line here. Might make it a little bit brighter so that you guys remember it. Okay, and this is essentially the next level of support. It's round about, there's $99 there, $100 is a big round number, but we could wick all the way down to $93 actually, to be precise. Okay, so at the moment we're on a downtrend, and like everything else is going to be on a downtrend, and it's just going level by level. Okay, so these are the levels of support. We kind of like, this one is still acting as support because we haven't closed below it, but I don't know how many times it will get tapped before it actually breaks, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so I could even move it to the edge of this high volume cluster here. That's exactly where we bounced, and this level is a level of resistance. So now we could just be trading sideways here and just do something like this, or we could indeed break to the downside, find a little bit of support there, and then just kind of trade between these two levels. All right, so that's between $100 and $160. So of course, if we get very good news in the markets, then you can expect the price to rally a little bit. But again, we've got a strong area here of low volume, which should act as resistance, and there's essentially even one a bit lower here, around about $200. So $200 should be resistance, and then of course $220, $260 also as resistance. And in the unlikely scenario that we break above it, then we've got all of these red levels here that I've highlighted at $300, $350, $400, and $500 as levels of resistance as well. But I think it's very unlikely that we do this before Wednesday. But you know, just they're there, so you guys know. AAVE versus BTC, it's looking very, very much like we were looking strong because we were hovering at resistance, but essentially we just broke that market structure. Okay, and we are still within this low volume area, like edge of the high volume cluster, if you like. So if I was to move this like this, it makes a little bit more sense, right? So this is a high volume cluster, and that's exactly where we're bouncing here right now. If we come back inside that high volume cluster, you notice that I've just moved that line. I've moved that line to the high volume node there. If we do enter this high volume cluster, it will look something like this, and we go and visit both sides. The only thing that can stop it is this point of control in the middle. Okay, this would be the entry for the short, and this would be the bottom and the ultimate target, if you like. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you to do what to do with the money. I'm just giving you this for educational and entertainment purposes, and telling you what I would do if I was trading this. Okay, at the moment we've got a higher balance area here, as you can see with this gray rectangle that I've highlighted here. So there's a bigger picture inside the small picture, if you like. So this is a nice little level of support around about here. Okay, in fact this low volume node is, but we just broke below it. Okay, but in terms of context, this is the consolidation level. Okay, so if we could effectively just do this, all right, so that's the context. But we could actually find a little bit of support here and go back up here, or if we break inside it, then we go and test this level here, then we could just hover and come all the way down here and find this level as resistance. So this is just like the level inside the level, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that there so that you guys keep an eye on that. But essentially we're looking at the bottom of this consolidation at around about 1800 sats and the top at around about 5000 sats. Okay, so 5700 sats, and we've got inside of this little box here, this is a high volume cluster, is between 2500 sats and 4000 sats. So we'll have to wait and see, but you can see that this is basically being outperformed right now. Okay, and I do expect a lot of these coins, people will start, paper hands will start moving out of these coins as they realize that Bitcoin is really looking quite weak. I think we've started seeing that already with some of these projects dumping a lot more than Bitcoin itself. So we'll have to wait and see. But of course, this is decentralized finance. There's a lot of things involved in it. There's a lot of, there's the lending rates, there's the staking, there's all these different mechanisms that are used to calculate the risk. But again, AAVE versus BTC is looking like we broke market structure, and we could see AAVE being outperformed by Bitcoin in the very near future. AAVE versus ETH are it looks very much the same. We did break below this level of support. I did have a little blue line here, as you can see from the previous week, that I would say that would potentially act as support. But if we break below this, it's going to be a very quick run all the way down to this level here. Okay, so this is a highly inefficient move, and large liquid moves tend to get retraced very, very quickly. So I would expect that to be done in one candle. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so at the moment it does look like we're being supported, but if we were to lose that, then I think that we see a very quick, sharp move to the downside on AAVE versus ETH. AAVE versus ETH immediately is looking a little bit better than AAVE versus Bitcoin. Okay, AAVE versus Bitcoin, we're already at support here. Okay, so AAVE could be actually finding a little bit of a bounce here. AAVE versus ETH, we're not even there yet. Okay, so if we were to fail that, that's yeah, it's really anybody's guess of what this will do. Again, it depends on Bitcoin, but we're being held by very little up here. We're kind of like tethering on the edge. If we break to the downside, it'll be very quickly to find its way down here. It's already happened on Bitcoin. So actually, AAVE versus Ethereum is looking a little bit more precarious than it does with Bitcoin, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense to you guys. So anyway, Compound versus USD. We entered that balance area. This was a large volume cluster here at these levels, like I said to you guys before. This was highlighted for you guys last week, and you can see that we're well on our way. And you can see that these levels that I put here as support, I mean, they didn't even get a look in. They don't even really act as support, and other than these big round numbers at $100 and stuff, when Bitcoin decides to have a dump, then everything just kind of gets dragged with it. Essentially what we're looking at really is that we've entered a new balance area, and we've not tested both sides yet. So I do expect the price to come all the way down here to $100, $93, something like that, and then we'll have to wait and see what happens down here. That level hasn't been tested for quite some time, so I do expect a little bounce there. And so when we get to around about this level here, around 93, 90, $100, let's say, if we do get there, I think Compound will probably find a bounce, and it could be even find a bounce all the way to $196, to $200 type of thing. So we'll just have to keep an eye on this, but we'll have to wait and see what happens at that meeting and what happens with Bitcoin as a result. Compound versus BTC, we're very much at all-time lows again. We're below that level that I was thinking that was going to be support. And again, it's just kind of like a little bit pointless to chart these coins when essentially they show a lot of weakness compared to Bitcoin. So we are at all-time lows. It's very difficult to say where it will stop, but I would go with round numbers. Okay, so look for the big round numbers on the way down. So 250, 200, 300, 150, 100, and that should really be a decent guide as to where we could lead to. But essentially, a little bit tricky now, and this is going to be the norm. You're going to see that a lot of these altcoins will look weak compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum, even though Bitcoin and Ethereum are also looking extremely weak. So you would expect to find a little bit of strength in these, but it's just not the case. Compound versus ETH. Yeah, we bounced on this previous level, which was basically essentially like the last line of support. We bounced there when we're going up, but it remains to be seen if this level here, which is essentially now resistance, if these levels here will let anything through. Okay, so essentially you've got quite a lot of resistance above. We just broke below that market structure, so these levels here I do expect to act as strong resistance here. Okay, so in this level of support, I don't expect it to hold much longer. It's already been tested quite a few times. This could be absolutely the bottom for on Compound versus ETH, but I don't know. I do see things breaking, you know, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows again, lower highs. That's essentially what the bear market does. Okay, so I think if you are not doing this yet, then people seem to forget that you can short these coins. So especially your big favorite coins like Solana and all of that stuff. Admittedly, it is a little bit late for shorting right now. We should be looking for buys when there's so much blood in the street. But I think a lot of people don't realize how much money is made in bear markets. So just bear that in mind. But here, essentially, it does look like we've bounced. We could find a little bit of resistance here. If we break above this, it would have to be with conviction, confirm this as support, and then start rotating here and perhaps even higher. Okay, but essentially we want to see conviction. We want to see a high volume candle just like here that shows real convincing, you know, real determination from whoever is bidding. That's essentially it. BAT versus USD, basic attention token. We are really inside. We kind of broke below this, finally broke below this low volume node here. I'm going to put this as a red line here. Okay, so these are the levels of resistance. They're essentially just the edges of the high volume cluster and the edges of the low volume area. And you can see that the level of support that I highlighted here in green, which is basically a low volume node in context, has acted as support for now. There's a nice little bit of consolidation that had not been tested before, so I do expect this level around about 65 cents to act as support for now. If we break below that, then I think the next level would be around about 49 cents, 50 cents, something like that. Yeah, so that would be the level to watch out for. Of course, we could now rotate like this, or if we break to the downside, we could rotate like this, okay, and perhaps even visit the highs. But that's essentially what I want to see. We also have a nice big low volume area now down below here, and so I'm going to put that as green because I expect that to act as support, okay, particularly this low volume node here, which I'm going to put as green. Okay, so again, 48 cents, 38 cents. Okay, so 48, you know, 50 cents is a nice big round number, and of course 50 cents as support. Then we've got also 65 cents as support, which is more or less, we are at 68, so yeah, 65 cents as support, and then we've got 83 as resistance, and then 87, 94, and so on. Okay, so that's essentially BAT versus USD. I do expect the price to go sideways until there is any news coming out. With basic attention token versus BTC, we can see here the price. I'm going to delete this, and this line here, this squiggle if you like, was just illustrating the fact that we could potentially just be bouncing now between this level of support and this level of resistance. Okay, so that's essentially what I want to see. This was previous resistance, it's now turned to support. It's only been tested once, so it's not surprising that it's holding right now. Of course, if we break that to the downside, then that will then become resistance, and the next level of support will be down here. Okay, so we've got an area here. We've also got very low volume area here, leading up to this consolidation here. So you just have to bear that in mind, because of course there's not a lot below there. Looking at the weekly chart, that is essentially all-time lows. Okay, so excuse me. So basically what we want to see is the price staying above this 1,500 sats, 1,600 sats, and just rotating between 1,600 and 2,000 sats. If we do break, however, to the downside, then the next level of support would be 1,100 sats, and it would be rotating between 1,100 and 1,500 sats. Okay, so essentially either this area here or this area here in terms of ranges. Okay, 9 times out of 10, well, 80% of the time, so let's say 8 out of 10 times, price just ranges, just goes sideways. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Okay, and when you're trading these levels, that's essentially what you want to see. Okay, so I've highlighted the levels of support. I've also highlighted the levels of resistance. I think that's more than enough information for you guys. But essentially, BAT versus BTC, even on the smaller time frame here, is looking basic attention token is looking weak compared to or has been acting weak compared to Bitcoin and USD. Signs of reversal for me would be a nice strong bounce here, and then of course we would be looking at trading this range here. Okay, and just keeping an eye on those levels. So that's BAT versus BTC. BAT versus ETH, like I said, I put a nice little curl there. I would expect this was the previous level, so there's a break in market structure. We broke that. Okay, so that market structure is broken, which is bearish essentially. But I was expecting to see a nice little curly price action here, and we tapped this level twice now as support, and we did see a nice little reaction there. So we could see the price go a little bit further up to around about here. So it could essentially just kind of do this and come back lower. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Bear with me a second. Do something like this. Deviate to the lows, go back high, but essentially we're just rotating between this level of support here and this level of resistance. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's like this, straight up and straight down, which is very unlikely, or if it's got like little deviations to the upside and downside with market structure. But essentially that's what we're looking for in terms of rotations right now. Okay, so that's BAT versus ETH. Link versus USD. You've also got some levels of support that have now turned to resistance, unsurprisingly, since last week. And I really do hope that you watched the TA update last week, because I did warn you guys that we were likely to see a nice big flush on Bitcoin. So I hope you made some money on that. That's a break in market structure. I'm going to put that as red, levels of resistance, and we are now below this one, so this is the next level of resistance, the closest one, if you like. So essentially what we want to see right now on Link versus USD is that we broke, this is also, just bear with me a second, let me just get this spawn. Okay, so we see that this is a nice low volume area here, nice low volume node. We haven't seen $13 yet, but $13 should act as support, and failing that, I think $10 is the obvious level of support here. But there's plenty of consolidation at these levels, which means that there's going to be residual liquidity at these levels, and you can see that we've already bounced on there once, bounced on there twice, maybe even 3 times if you count us today. So let's just see how many times it can hold. If it does break to the downside, no big deal. $10 is the level to buy, and I would expect price to come all the way down here, and we can start rotating like this. Okay, so you just have to bear that $10 really needs to hold. Of course, if it doesn't hold, then we can go a little bit lower, and you'll have to look at these next levels of consolidation, and I'll be looking at these levels here where previous consolidation happened as levels of support. Okay, so essentially like this. All right, so $1, $3, $7. So that's Link versus USD. Of course, you've got the levels of resistance above: $14, $19, $25, and $38. Link versus BTC. We're still very much, I mean, obviously we've had quite a bit of a price correction here. We've basically retraced the whole of that rally that we had at the beginning of the year. and we are yet to touch this level of support here. Okay, so this level of support, I don't know why it's in red. It has already been tapped quite a few times, but it is the lower edge of this high volume cluster. Okay, so it's been tapped here a few times. This is acted as support here. It's formed here. Right, so this is the order block here. So this has already been tapped here, and it's been tapped here. So it's looking a little bit precarious, but luckily there are other low volume nodes just below that. Okay, so there is a nice big order block here, consolidation if you like, around about these levels here. So just bear that in mind. But essentially this one, I wouldn't I wouldn't rely on this as a very strong level of support, just purely because it's been tapped so many times. So that's Link versus BTC. Obviously the levels of resistance are above us. Let me just turn that to red. And we are essentially at the point of control here. So this is a nice big level of resistance at this level here. I'm gonna put that there as well. Okay, so yeah, I think that we just have to bear that in mind, that that's now a nice big level of resistance that is just above price. So we could see a nice big trip, a quick trip to the downside here. So Link versus ETH. Again, we've pretty much retraced the whole of the move to the upside. We found a little bit support on this order block here, but we are essentially below this level of support. So I'm going to put that as red. There's now resistance, and essentially what we want to do, I was expecting a bounce here and perhaps start rotating here, but since we are below, we could just start rotating here. Okay, rotating like this, and we could also rotate in the middle here. Okay, so I think we visit perhaps to the downside first. There's nice level of support here, and there's a nice little consolidation there, and then confirmed that as support, and it has been tested many times. So I do expect this big rectangle to act as a lovely bit of support. There's also a nice big volume cluster, as you can see. Of course, if we break to the downside and then fail to get above it, then we're very likely to come and test both sides of it. But there's no point of predicting that because it hasn't happened yet. Okay, we're still up here. So essentially what I want to see right now, I do think that Link versus ETH is very likely that we see lower prices here on Link continue to fall against the major coins, okay, just like all the other less popular coins, and essentially the majors are going to carry on outperforming the others. So if we find ourselves down here, I do expect price to find a little bit of support, and we can just rotate here for a very long time. If we break to either side, then you know which levels to look for. So this would be the next level of ranging, and essentially here could be a very tight range and a visit to the downside as well. Okay, so just have to bear that in mind. These are the three scenarios, but at least now you've got some. If you pause the video, you've got some levels there where you can highlight on your chart and put on your chart to make your mind up. Finally, Uni versus USD. We didn't even see that little bounce and a retest to the upside. Okay, so that's quite telling. It's looking very, very weak versus USD, but it's not surprising. I think a lot of these coins are right now, and you can see that people are just panic selling at these levels. Even these low volume nodes are not acting as support anymore. So I'm just going to change these colors here to red because they should now act as resistance essentially. This is going to be a long way to recover, even if Bitcoin decides to rally. Okay, so I'm going to put a few more levels of support here just because it's looking a little bit precarious. I'll put another one here, and then it's really just down to this level here. Okay, so we're looking at $8, $5, $3, and then $1.7 or perhaps $2 as the next level of support. Okay, if that doesn't hold, then I think we go to all-time lows, and then it's only time will tell where it can stop. But this is basically Uniswap, and Uniswap is looking very weak versus the US dollar right now. Okay, so even if we do see a rally to the upside, I expect these levels of resistance to do their job as resistance, But if you look at market structure here, we could come all the way up to this level here and then come much lower. Okay, you can see this is a previous level of support, and it's very likely to act as resistance. That's usually how it works. Okay, so I've put these levels here because they could actually cause friction, but you also have to look at market structure just to make sure that you know what you're doing, and to make sure that you look at all the levels. Okay, so as for Uni versus Bitcoin, you can see that we've kind of pretty much retraced the whole of that rally. We're not even respecting these low volume areas anymore. This TA is becoming very redundant very quickly. Even though I can guess the direction, I can't tell you where it's going to bounce. And that's purely because these are all influenced by Bitcoin. Of course, as long as Bitcoin dumps, these will continue to dump. So essentially what I'm looking for right now on here is that I can see that this is a high volume cluster here, relatively lower than this one here, but this is also another one here with essentially a very low volume node in between. Okay, so I want to see, we've just entered this balance area, so we could come all the way down here to run about 2,185 sats. If, however, we come all the way down there, then we could possibly see a bounce here, and just kind of rotate inside of this. Okay, if we get rejected at this one, if we get acceptance, then basically we'll be rotating inside of this one here. Okay, and anything below that, I mean, this whole thing is all-time lows. So again, we've got no point of reference there. So a price discovery, price can travel very quickly through these areas. It's uncharted territory. So we'll just have to wait, and I suppose if you are involved and invested in these coins, you just have to pray that the FOMC meeting really comes out a little bit more dovish, or a little bit more positive, if you like. So that's Uni versus Bitcoin. Of course, you've got these levels here. I'm going to put these as red, for they're now resistance levels. And Uni versus Ethereum, very much going sideways. It does look like this is respecting this low volume area here, which is a previous consolidation. As you can see here, there's a little bit of consolidation there, and the price is kind of respected with a nice big wick here. So essentially what we want to see for this to become positive and Uni to start outperforming Ethereum, we would like to see something like this, confirm this as support so that we can rally up there. Of course, it doesn't have to look like that. Sometimes it will just look like, oh, we found resistance and it rose to the downside. So we just have to observe the price, but essentially the levels of support, the level of resistance right now could be around about here, which is previous levels of support. Okay, or perhaps even a little bit lower here. I'm just going to leave it there. In fact, I prefer this one here because it's in line with that order block. So yeah, the level of support, the resistance around about here, the levels of support is exactly where we are, because it's this consolidation here. If we fail this one, then we go to this one, which is the next one. Failing this one, again, we're at all-time lows, and it's no telling where we might end up. But right now it looks like we found a nice little bounce, and essentially what we would like to see, if you are betting that Uni swap will outperform Ethereum, is that now we've printed a higher low, we go and print a higher high. Okay, so if that happens, then it's very bullish in terms of Uni versus ETH, and I think Uni will start outperforming Ethereum, and that could perhaps be an indication that some of these altcoins will start outperforming the majors. But you know, we have to wait and see if that does indeed happen, if it happens. But I'm just trying to highlight it so you know how to identify it. So again, like I said at the beginning of this video, none of this TA on altcoins, and I'll reiterate, none of it makes any sense unless you're looking at Bitcoin. Okay, because if Bitcoin decides to go down, it will drag everything else down with it, regardless if the project is the best project you've ever heard of, or if it's got the best team, or if we're really close to a historical support level. It really doesn't matter, because Bitcoin is the barometer, essentially, okay, of the whole crypto market. So please keep an eye on Bitcoin. Just see where we are. If you see that we are at potentially support level and Bitcoin is likely to bounce there, then you can start looking at these alts to start outperforming the majors. But until then it's very likely that these altcoins will continue to get battered compared to Bitcoin. and that's just the way it is. If Bitcoin is the barometer to crypto, then the Nasdaq and the S&P is really the barometer for Bitcoin, and ultimately you'll have to keep an eye on the market as a whole, if you like. So I hope this was useful for you guys. I'm sorry that I've taken so much time. I don't see any more questions in the group, so I hope this was useful. I'm going to put some timestamps on so that you can flip and you don't have to listen to me rant for an hour. But yeah, I hope this was useful. You're more than welcome to join the group and start. There's a few things changing. I think a lot more people are going to start getting access to the trading channels. Please, if you do have access, or if you've actually been promoted to trader role and you've got a trader role in the group, to post charts and post, get involved in the conversation and everything, so that we can start assessing to see if you are indeed at a competent level, that we can start listening to you and your ideas. We very much want people to be participating so that we can increase their role capability, so they can post charts of their own and post trade ideas of their own, because essentially we want to create a hive mind where everybody exchanges knowledge and shares knowledge and becomes more powerful as a result of that. So, you know, the power of the community, if you like. So do participate, do take part. Don't be scared. There's no such thing as a silly question or a stupid question. We're there to help. Any questions or anything like that, please do ask. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the group, and I hope to speak to you guys soon. I'll have another TA update for you guys on Wednesday. Until then, trade smart and protect your capital. Cheers. Bye-bye.